Welcome to Omega Bonda Stories. Let's begin.
The day I decided to disappear, the city felt like a hallway with no doors. I walked into the tower with my badge on my chest and my resignation letter folded in my pocket. Everyone called him the Enigma boss. They said his title like a warning. They also said he could hear a lie in the space between breaths. I was an Omega who had learned how to be quiet. Not the sweet kind, the careful kind. The kind that keeps you safe around power you did not ask for. I kept my scent muted with cheap suppressants and I kept my eyes down in elevators. I told myself it was only one more day. Then I would take a bus out of this city and never come back. His floor was always colder than the rest. When the doors opened, I felt it as pressure. Not violent, just absolute. I delivered the folder and waited in the conference room with my hands folded to stop them from shaking. I never saw him arrive. One moment the chair at the end of the table was empty and the next it held him. Tall, still, perfectly controlled. His suit was dark and clean like he belonged to shadow more than light. He did not speak. He looked at the folder. He looked at me. His gaze settled on my throat as if he was listening to something I could not hear. The meeting ended. I gathered papers and moved fast. My phone buzzed in my pocket with the weight of unfinished goodbyes. For weeks I had been recording voice notes I never sent. Messages to the boy I used to be before debt and fear taught me to shrink. I slipped into the restroom and locked myself into the far stall. The light flickered. My hands were cold. I pressed record and whispered because my voice felt too exposed in that building. I told him I was sorry. I told him I did my best. I told him I was leaving before the world could take the last gentle thing in me. I promised him I would find a place where my scent could exist without fear. I promised him I would learn what safety felt like again. The restroom door opened. I froze. Shoes crossed the tile and stopped outside my stall. I ended the recording and held the phone to my chest like a shield. A knock came once. Not hard. Not angry. Just there. Then a voice. Low. Controlled. He said my name. My throat locked. I did not answer. Footsteps retreated. The door opened and closed. The restroom felt empty again, but my skin still hummed as if his presence had brushed the air. I left with my head down and reached into my pocket to steady myself with my phone. My fingers met smooth metal. The case felt wrong. The weight was different. I stopped in the hallway. The phone in my hand was not mine. It was his. My own phone was gone. For a second the world tilted. I must have switched them in panic in that frozen moment. If he had my phone, then he had my voice note. He had my final goodbye. He had the soft parts of me I never showed. I stared at his screen. A message appeared. Come to my office now. No name. No greeting. Just certainty. My instincts screamed to run. My body remembered how to obey. My mind argued for dignity and survival at the same time. Another message appeared. I will bring your phone back. Do not be afraid. I pictured him alone in his office with my voice in his hand. I pictured his expression when he heard me speaking to myself like a dying prayer. The shame burned. Omegas in my world were taught to be useful or silent. Not honest. Not fragile. I had broken the rule, and now the strongest man in the building held the proof. My resignation letter pressed against my ribs like a heartbeat. I had planned to leave without being noticed. Now I was being summoned. The power imbalance should have made me feel small. Instead, it made me feel seen, and that was worse. Being ignored is a familiar pain. Being witnessed can split you open. I told myself he would return my phone and forget my words. I told myself this was only a mistake. Then my instincts leaned toward the elevator like they recognized a path I had not chosen. My breath shook. I did not know which part of that sentence terrified me more, the promise or the fact that he knew fear lived in me. The elevator chimed behind me. The doors slid open. He stood inside like he had been waiting the whole time. His eyes met mine. They did not soften. They did not harden either. They simply held. In his hand was my phone. The screen was lit. On it was the play button for my final goodbye. The elevator doors closed and the world shrank to quiet steel and breath. He did not speak. I stared at the numbers above the door as if they could save me. My heart kept trying to climb out of my chest. His scent was not masked. It was controlled. It felt like standing near a fire that refused to burn. When we reached his floor, the hallway was empty. No assistants. No guards. Just soft carpet and dim light and the heavy calm that followed him. He walked without hurry. I followed because my legs had learned obedience long before my mind could argue. His office was all glass and shadow. The desk was spotless. He set my phone on it and then placed his own beside it with care. He faced me and pointed toward a chair. I sat because refusing felt like a challenge and I had no strength for that. He picked up my phone and looked at the screen. I waited for anger. I waited for the hard lesson every Omega learns about mistakes. He did not give me any of that. He walked to the window and stood with his back to me. His silence stretched long enough to make my thoughts turn on me. What did he hear? Did he hear the part where I begged myself to stay gentle? Did he hear the part where I admitted I had nowhere to go? I forced myself to speak because if I did not, I would break. I said I am sorry. I said I switched them by accident. I said I will resign today and you will not have to see me again. He turned. Slow. Precise. He opened a drawer and took out my resignation letter. My breath left my lungs. I had not given it to anyone. It should have been in my pocket. He placed it on the desk and slid it toward me. He did not touch my hand. He simply offered it back like a question. I reached for it with shaking fingers. I asked how. He spoke at last. One sentence. Low and steady. He said, "You dropped it in the hallway." The room felt smaller after his voice. I said I cannot stay. I said my instincts keep screaming and I cannot keep living like that. His eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger. In focus. He watched me the way you watch a person standing near an edge. He spoke again. 2 words. He said, "Where else?" I did not have an answer. He moved around the desk and sat across from me with space between us. He rested his hands on his knees. He looked like a man who had trained himself never to reach. He said, "Your voice sounded like someone saying goodbye." Heat rushed behind my eyes. Shame. Fear. Relief. I could not tell which one burned hardest. I said it was not meant for you. I said it was private. I said, "Please delete it." He held my gaze. Then he reached for my phone again. His thumb hovered over the screen. He said, "I will not share it." He said, "I will not use it against you." He said, "I only need to understand why you are trying to vanish." My throat ached. The power imbalance made honesty feel dangerous. Yet his calm made it feel possible. I whispered that I am tired of being unseen. I said I have been running since I was 16. I said every place I go I leave pieces of myself behind. He listened like he had all the time in the world. I had heard stories about him before I ever saw his face. People said he was an enigma, not just an alpha, something rarer, something that could hold a room in silence and make grown men forget how to breathe. They said he never bonded and he never needed to. Sitting across from him, I understood the truth under the rumors. It was not fear alone. It was gravity. He did not lean forward to intimidate me. He did not raise his voice. He simply existed with such calm authority that my instincts kept trying to align with him. That terrified me, because anger is a weapon you can predict. Calm can be a shelter. My hands clenched around the letter. I said I have debt. I said my old pack still thinks they own my time. I said I cannot afford another mistake. He listened. When I finished, his eyes dropped to my hands and then lifted back to my face like he had made a choice. Then he turned my phone toward me. The play button waited like a cliff edge. His thumb lowered. And the first sound that filled his office was my own voice saying I told him I was sorry. My own voice filled the room. Small. Bare. I heard the tremble I tried to hide. The words felt worse in that space. His office made everything sound official. I flinched and half rose. I reached for the phone without thinking. My fingers hovered above it and then stopped. He lifted his hand and turned the screen away from me. Not to keep it. To remove the sharp edge. Then he pressed pause. Silence fell. He asked, "Are you leaving today?" I told him yes. I told him I have a bag under my bed. I told him I bought a one-way ticket with money I should have used for rent. I told him staying means being caught. I said it like a fact, but it was a wound. My old pack did not sign papers when they took me in. They signed my skin with rules and debt. They taught me that an Omega survives by being useful. When I ran, I learned how long fear can follow. I worked nights. I slept with my shoes near the bed. Every time a number I did not recognize flashed on my phone, my stomach tightened. I kept telling myself I could outpace the past if I never stayed in one place long enough to be found. Then I met his silence, and for one moment my body wondered what it would be like to stop running. That thought scared me so much that I bought the ticket the same day. He did not demand names. He stood and poured water into a glass. He set it in front of me and sat again with the same careful distance. I said, "You listened to my private goodbye." I said, "Why?" He looked at the pause screen and then at me. He said, "Because I heard pain and I did not know if you would still be here when the day ended." That sentence did not sound like power. It sounded like worry. Worry from a man the whole tower feared. He watched my face as if he could hear the parts one did not say. I realized he was not only listening to my words. He was tracking my breath, my pulse, the small tremors in my hands. And he was staying gentle anyway. I whispered that you do not know me. He said, "I know enough." He held my phone out. He did not toss it. He did not hold it hostage. He offered it back like he was returning my voice to my own hands. I took it. My fingers brushed him for a second. He pulled back immediately. He said, "If you ask me, I will erase it." He said, "If you do not ask me, I will pretend I never heard it." He said, "The choice is yours." No one had offered me a choice in a long time. I tried to make my fear sound like logic. I said, "You are my boss." I said, "You should not be involved." I said, "I will leave and you will forget this happened." He reached into a drawer and took out a plain envelope. He slid it across the desk. Inside was a new building badge with my name printed in clean ink. Higher access. Better pay listed on the back in simple numbers that made my stomach drop. He said, "You work hard." He said, "You have been invisible here." He said, "I can change that." Fix that sounded like control, like a leash. I said, "I do not want charity." He said, "It is not charity." He said, "It is compensation." He said, "I do not like seeing value wasted." My hands tightened around the phone. I wanted to refuse. I also wanted to breathe. I asked what you wanted from me. His silence stretched and I realized he was choosing his words like they mattered. He said, "I want you safe." The air changed. My suppressants felt thin. My scent flickered through the room and I hated myself for it. He did not change. He only lifted his gaze to my face and held it steady. He stood and stopped 2 steps away. Close enough that I could feel his presence. Far enough that I could still run. He said, "Look at me." I did. His eyes were dark and quiet. There was no hunger there. Only intention. Only patience. His hand lifted slowly. He did not touch me. He touched the air near my cheek as if he was memorizing where my fear lived. I forgot how to breathe. I did not know it then, and my heart was not ready to accept what my instincts were screaming, but something had already shifted between us, and there was no going back. If you are feeling what I felt in that moment, then you understand why I need you to stay with me through this journey. Hit subscribe so you do not miss what happens when he finally breaks his silence, because I promise you it will shatter everything you thought you knew about us. His hand hovered near my cheek like he was measuring the distance between fear and trust. I sat perfectly still because any movement felt like it could shatter the fragile calm he had built around me. He lowered his hand first. He stepped back. The restraint in that simple motion made my eyes sting. He said, "You can leave." He said, "I will not stop you." I expected a trap. Instead, he offered freedom like it was his default. I walked out with my phone in my hand and my resignation letter pressed to my stomach. Outside, the winter air cut my lungs. I started toward the bus stop and then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. My stomach dropped. Fear knows the shape of certain sounds. I did not answer. A text followed. "We found you." My hands went numb. Every memory in my body woke up at once. My old pack never needed my address. They only needed time. Another text came. "Answer." I stared at the word until my vision shook. My thumb moved before I could stop it. Not to reply. To call the number he had used to text me earlier. It rang once. He answered without greeting. My throat locked. I forced air through my lungs and said they found me. Silence held for a beat. Then he asked, "Where are you?" I looked up and realized I had wandered into a small plaza between buildings. I told him. He said, "Stay there." I waited with my back against a pillar. My hands shook so hard my phone rattled. People passed me without looking. That was the cruelty of the city. You can drown in plain sight. A black car rolled to the curb. The back door opened. He stepped out. He was not wearing his suit jacket now. The loosened sleeves made him look more human, still controlled. His gaze found me instantly. He walked to me and stopped close enough that his body blocked the view from the street. He did not touch me. He simply positioned himself like a wall. He said, "Get in the car." I obeyed. Inside the car, the world became muffled. He sat across from me. The driver pulled away. He watched me like he was making sure I stayed present. I tried to apologize. He lifted his hand once and I stopped. The gesture was gentle and final. He said, "You do not owe me an explanation right now." My breath broke. Tears rose and I turned my face away. A soft sound escaped anyway. He did not comment. He placed a clean handkerchief on the seat beside me. Close enough to reach, not forced. After a long stretch, he asked if they were threatening you. I swallowed. I said they never need to threaten. I said they only need to remind me what they think I am. The car descended into an underground garage. The gate closed behind us with a heavy final sound. He opened my door himself. He offered his hand and waited. I stared at it like it was a bridge. I could not take it. He lowered it without offense. He walked beside me instead. A private elevator carried us up into silence. The doors opened into a home that felt like night and safety. Soft lights, dark wood, silence that belonged to peace. My phone vibrated again as if the past had followed me through concrete and steel. Another message. The same unknown number. A time and an address. A demand dressed up as certainty. My chest tightened. I held the phone out like it was poison. He glanced at the screen and something cold moved across his eyes. Not rage. Calculation. He took his own phone from his pocket and made one call. He spoke quietly. 2 sentences. I could not hear the other voice. I only heard his calm. When he ended the call, he looked at me again and the cold was gone. He said, "They will not step inside this building." He said, "If they try, security will remove them." He said, "If they contact you again, show me." He said, "You are not alone in this." I wanted to believe him. Belief felt dangerous. Yet the way he said it made my body loosen a fraction. He guided me to a couch and stepped back. He said, "You will stay here tonight." He said, "You will sleep." He said, "In the morning we will handle whatever follows you." I said, "I cannot." He said, "You can." The calm certainty in his voice made my chest ache. I realized I had never heard an alpha speak to me like I was capable. He turned toward a hallway and then paused. He looked back at me. He said, "I heard your goodbye." He said, "I will not let it become true." Then he walked away and left me alone with the sound of my own heartbeat and the weight of his promise. I woke to the soft light and the scent of coffee. For a moment I forgot where I was and fear rushed back. Then I remembered his promise and my body unclenched. I found him in the kitchen. No suit. Sleeves rolled. He looked almost ordinary until he lifted his gaze and the room answered him. Calm authority that did not need volume. A mug waited for me. I took it and held the warmth between my palms. He slid a thin folder across the counter. My name was on it. Under that was the name of my old pack. Under that was a number that matched the debt that had chased me for years. My hands began to shake. He said, "I bought the debt." He said, "They cannot use it to pull you back." He said, "My legal team is drafting a release." He said, "You will sign it and you will be free." Freedom sounded like a fairy tale. The city does not hand out fairy tales to Omegas like me. I asked why. He was silent for a long moment. Then he finally broke the rule everyone believed about him. He spoke more than one sentence. He said, "I have watched you for months." He said, "You walk like someone waiting for impact." He said, "You disappear when you think you are allowed." He paused as if he was asking permission to keep going. He said, "I am an enigma." He said, "My instincts do not attach easily." He said, I live in control because control keeps my world steady. He said, when I noticed you, something in me shifted. Not desire, not ownership, recognition. My pulse was hammered. He said, I stayed silent because power can feel like a cage. He said, I would rather lose you than trap you. He said, then I heard your goodbye and I understood you were about to vanish again. Tears burned. I hated how much those words mattered. I said, you do not even know what I can give. He said, I am not asking for what you can give. He said, I am asking for your consent to stay near you. He said, I will protect you with distance if that is what you need. He said, I will wait for trust as long as it takes. I looked down at the folder. Release papers. Pay raise. A short note in his handwriting that said, you can leave at any time. My throat tightened. I said, if I sign this, then I will owe you. He shook his head. He said, you will owe yourself. He said, you promised that boy safety. I nodded once. He slid a pen toward me and waited. I signed. The moment the ink dried, my phone vibrated with another unknown number. Another demand that did not know the world had changed. He took my phone and deleted the message without reading it aloud. Then he handed it back. He said, it ends now. I believed him. Later, he led me to a quiet room with clean sheets and a folded blanket at the foot of the bed. He stopped at the doorway like he would not cross it without permission. He said, rest. The words came out before I could stop them. I said, stay until I fall asleep. His eyes softened by a fraction, the smallest crack in the armor. He sat in the chair by the bed, hands on his knees, space between us. His presence filled the room anyway. As my eyelids grew heavy, I opened my voice notes and started a new recording. My voice sounded different, still fragile, less alone. I said, I am still here. For the first time, I let my scent breathe. The room did not punish me for it. He did not react like an alpha looking for control. He only exhaled as if some tight thing in him was released. He said my name, not as an order, as if he was placing it somewhere safe. I turned my head on the pillow and met his eyes in the light. He said, you are not a problem to solve. He said, you are a person to protect. My chest ached with relief. I reached one hand toward him, not all the way, just enough to show the choice. He covered my fingers with his for a moment. Warm, still. Then he let go and waited for me to decide what came next. That is how my world changed and how I found home in the last place I expected. If this story made you feel something deep and real, then I create these emotional worlds every single week for hearts like yours that crave connection that goes beyond words. Subscribe so you never miss the moment when two broken souls find each other in the darkness. Your support means everything, and it lets me keep bringing you stories that understand what you are searching for. Hit that subscribe button and let's feel everything together because you deserve stories that see you.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more emotional stories.